How to lose weight without counting calories. Yes, it's possible. Yes, it most certainly can be done. And therefore, by extension, yes, perhaps you can lose weight without counting your calories as well. In fact, even to this day, I do not regularly use Chronometer or MyFitnessPal or any calorie or macro tracking apps or software. Even in my recent fat loss phase over the summer, I've had a chronometer account for the best part of 10 years. I didn't log into it once over the summer. And I was relatively happy with my results on the scale in that recent fat loss phase. And so in this video, I want to share with you two different ways, two different methods for losing weight, getting the scale moving without actually having to count your calories. Elephant in the room first though, just because we're not counting calories here, that doesn't mean they don't matter. That doesn't mean they're not important. Sorry for the double negative there, but just because we're not counting them, that doesn't mean they're not a deal breaker for weight loss, because they absolutely are. They are the fundamental law of weight loss that is going to make or break your success. So not counting calories does not translate to eat as much as you want, calories don't matter at all. If you're eating healthy, the calories aren't important because it's all about hormones. This is a nonsense anyway. This is not my view. So let's get that one out the way before we get into our two methods here. Method number one is the hit and hope strategy. You follow sensible principles. You try not to eat too much food. You eat until you are satisfied, not stuffed. As a rule of thumb, this is tricky for overeaters. I will consume historic overeaters. You eat plenty of whole, healthy foods. There's some debate about what a whole, healthy food is, of course, but directionally anyway, you clean up your diet and eliminate lots of the junk foods and maybe the high-calorie foods in your diet. In other words, you just transition to eating better, which I appreciate is somewhat vague. And then on the exercise front, you try and move your body a little bit. Maybe there's some walking, maybe there's a little bit of something cardio-based, maybe you play a sport anyway, maybe you lift some weights, but you're trying to, at least multiple times per week, along with not being too sedentary and just getting steps in anyway, a couple of times a week, you're trying to do something marginally more intense anyway and get that heart rate up a little. Just, let's say, sensible and kind of normie mainstream health practices. And that's your hit and hope strategy. And you see what happens on the scale. And you don't pay any attention to calories, and you don't necessarily think too much or second guess about, can I eat a little bit more food today because I'm a little bit hungrier? Can I have that extra snack today as long as it's maybe a bit of fruit, something healthy? Can I trust myself to have that handful of cashew nuts quite sensibly because I feel I do actually need them today? You kind of can listen to some of those instinctual voices anyway about how much, how little, etc., etc. And you aren't policing, let's say, your appetite too much. That is the hit and hope strategy, and then you see what happens on the scale, and then from that scale feedback, maybe you get some evidence that, oh no, I lost 3 pounds this week, fantastic, I don't need to change anything, I can keep doing what I'm doing because it's clearly working. Again, the scale is just a big feedback system for your strategy, right? The problem here, obviously, is that your strategy is very imprecise. There isn't a lot necessarily of continuity, unless you're literally eating the same foods and the same amounts, the same quantities every single day and doing very similar things with your exercise over the course of the week. It's not really, you haven't really got a clear baseline for what you're actually doing to test against the scale. So that might be one criticism there, is it can be really inconsistent, but generally you're eating healthy, you're moving your body more, you see what happens on the scale. If it doesn't lead to results on the scale, this can inform you that maybe the portions do need adjusting, or the exercise maybe needs upping the ante with. Again, the problem here though is you don't have a lot to work with because your baseline diet isn't that structured and precise anyway. Again, you're just eating healthy and you're just trying to move more. And so when you get feedback from the scale that says, oh, we didn't lose weight this week, you're not necessarily sure precisely where to start because your diet is so changeable anyway. Does that make sense? But maybe by being more conscious then the following week of portions, exercise, etc., you can land yourself a 2 pound loss the following week. So this is the hit and hope strategy. And look, this can work by directionally cleaning up your diet, as I say, by moving a little bit more, and then you've got calories burning on that end of the spectrum. Yes, that can indeed work. What you will often find though in many cases is it doesn't work forever. And then again, when you need to actually make some really precise controlled changes after your initial breakthrough, you hit that first plateau, it's really hard to actually know where to make those changes because, again, for the millionth time. Your diet is so random and changeable anyway because there isn't all that much structure there. There's nothing tying you to any particular meal plan or structure like counting your calories might force you to do. So that's hit and hope strategy. Upside, it's pretty laissez-faire, it's pretty relaxed. Not too many rules, not too much neurotic app typing. I had this much, this much. No measuring cups, perhaps, and maybe you still want to be disciplined with some of your portioning. But yeah, that's the upside. Downsides are massive lack of precision. There is no guarantees. Like, you might spend 5, 6, 7 days doing something that was never actually going to produce results on the scale, but you believe it will produce on the scale, and then you've lost all that time. Maybe you stay 2, 3 weeks in that phase. And then, of course, the other downside, as I've touched on already, is when you go and make a change. Hey, I'm not really sure what I'm working with anyway because there isn't that much structure to how I'm doing it. So hit and hope strategy works, but I find it's short-lasting and it's more likely to work with people, let's call a spade, who have an awful lot of weight to lose anyway. And so you're almost going to, if that is you, get away with, it's not the right phraseology, but yeah, you'll get away with winging it a little bit more, thanks to having such a high BMR, maintenance level of calories, to where it will be quite easy for you to put yourself in a calorie deficit just by cleaning up your diet and moving a little bit more. That gets harder later on. Now, method number 2, of course, for losing weight without counting calories is the one that I've adopted over these 10 years. You can already see by the way that I framed this that I think I'm going to say this is the superior one, right? But that's why I've adopted it, because I do think this is the better way. What I've tried to do with method number 2 is find the middle ground between the neuroses of daily calorie tracking and that deciding any rules around food decisions. In other words, no, I don't think I can eat more food today, even though I genuinely feel hungry, because it ain't going to fit into my calories, man. That kind of neuroses, which that's a strong word, but that's how it feels to me. It does feel slightly neurotic. Tracking everything, on the old tippy-tappy every time I want to eat something healthy, having to feel like I have to record that, and maybe what that does to my relationship with food gradually over time. But then also marrying that, not going too far with that, but then having some semblance of, yeah, the freedom and the fun. You know, okay, there isn't much structure and precision there, but the freedom and the fun, at least, of the tracking-free, the calorie tracking-free lifestyle, and try and find some reasonable middle ground to get the best of both worlds there. That's what I've attempted to do. And what I've landed on is I still need to be quite calorie conscious. What do I mean by this? Roughly understand principles like caloric density a little bit, that some whole foods contain more calories per gram than others. This can all be very overwhelming, but it's stuff that I've been doing this a long time. It's stuff that you learn in time. Having some, when I say calorie consciousness, calorie awareness, some understanding of the amount of calories that I might need to maintain weight, to gain weight, to lose weight sensibly as well. So let's say I know for me right now that if I eat 2,500 calories today, that might start promoting fat loss. Now, I know this through years of knowing my body, but initially you might need to use things like calorie calculators online. I'm not talking about trackers, but calculators initially to gather that data. Okay, I'm going to shoot for around 23, 28, 3,000, 2,000, 1,800 calories, whatever it is. And that becomes your North Star. And then within that, building repeatable meals that conform to a certain calorie amount. This has really been the secret for me, to allow me to tap into some level of precision and structure from the very, very pro calorie counting side, without it being the total winging it, you know, of this side here, because I'm still using things like measuring cups and I'm still building out meals with calories in mind, but again, not having to track everything and never being fearful to just eat a little bit more or a little bit less food just because an app tells me that I can't, but actually listen to some of those instincts as well. And so I would say if you had to put it on a spectrum, on one end is total calorie freedom, calorie counting freedom, the other end is meticulous calorie counting. I don't think I've actually landed in the middle. I think I've landed more like here. I think I'm in like the 25% quartile this end. And so my middle ground has gone from the middle to like this way. Okay, you do need lots of precision and structure, but I just don't want to do the whole calorie counting thing. And again, this can still work down here, as I described in method number 1. It is just slightly more chaotic. Here is perfect for me, and it's my damn YouTube channel, so I'm going to tell you what works for me regardless of whether it might be beneficial to you lot or not. But this is what's worked for me so nicely, is just having some level of structure, the calorie awareness. And so I've digressed. Big shock, but that 2,500 calorie sort of ballpark calorie deficit for me, I might then say, all right, well, I know every day I'm going to have 3 meals at 700 calories. All right, that puts me on 2,100 calories. Then I'll have a couple of snacks. That'll put me to 2,500 calories. And I dare say, letting that, I still need some discipline, letting that decide my food decisions throughout the day, that's going to put me close. I won't always finish on 2,500. Sometimes it'll be 26. Sometimes it'll be 27 because I've got a really high step count and the appetite is cranking. Sometimes it'll be 27 because I've messed up, right? And I ate a little bit too much. Even if it was healthy, I didn't need actually all that fruit after dinner as well. I didn't really need that as dessert, did I? Whilst I was watching Lord of the Rings for the 20th time again, right? But some days I actually only eat 2,400 because I missed something or I was so busy, like I miscounted something or I was so busy or whatever. Or I just listened to my appetite and I didn't want as much food the next day, so I didn't. I had a smaller this, or yeah, the avocados were bad, so I missed the healthy fat sauce with lunch, so that knocks half a medium avocado. There's 120 calories gone-ish, 110, 120 calories thereabout. Again, calorie consciousness does not mean ignorance is bliss. We're totally ignorant to calories. We don't admit that they matter. This is where I've landed, is some level of calorie consciousness. I understand caloric density. I understand how many calories are in half an avocado. You might not know that right now, but you learn all of this stuff in time. It's about making the pledge, if you embrace it, if you want to try my method, adopt my method, it's about making the pledge to, I'm going to learn a little bit more about nutrition in time, particularly on the calorie point. You can extend this to macronutrients, but then it gets really overwhelming, but particularly on the calorie point, I'm going to understand how many calories are in certain whole foods over time, and that's going to allow me to maybe make more sensible choices over time. And every day, basically, the way I think about it now is, 2,800 calories, 2,900 calories is about my maintenance. That's not to say you should copy and paste those numbers, by the way. That might be really unsuccessful for you. So don't even try that, right? These things are all, calorie intake is massively relative. That's worth caveating. But if I'm going for my maintenance right now, which feels like about 2,800, and I'm doing, all right, well, breakfast was my usual oatmeal at 600 calories, because I kind of missed this part, or I forgot to expand on it, but I've already designed lots of my meals, guys. This is the important thing, is I've designed the oatmeal to be 650 calories. I've designed my lunch to be 700 calories. My hummus and veggie sandwiches, I already know they're 550 calories. That is true, by the way. Some of these numbers I'm just pulling out of thin air as examples. But the hummus and veggie sandwiches are always 550 calories for me, the way I design them. And so hummus, avocado, veggies, bit of fruit on the side. I do that, that's 550 calories for me in the way that I design it with the type of bread that I use. So I know. Now, you might say, and you'd be right, but you're kind of still tracking your calories. It's like, well, I am, but I'm not. I've done it, right? It's historic. It's been and gone. I know that meal is 550 calories. I'm not doing it all the time now. I'm not like this every time I eat that meal. It's just in the bank of my approved meals. So I've got this portfolio of repeatable meals that I know the calorie amounts of, and they don't change that much. My diet doesn't change that much. This is one advantage of being a repetitive eater. And so I know every day, within reason, I'm going to be in my calorie ballpark just by eating my foods in the same amount. And that's obviously still a bit of discipline required to not go and overeat and to say no to the almond croissants all the time, etc., etc. But generally speaking, this has been a fantastic way for me to ensure that there's some structure and precision there to get me the results, and to get me the results efficiently. Because you can still get results with method number 1, remember, but it isn't efficient because it's so hit and hope, it's so scatty, it's so chaotic and variable. So I've still got some structure and precision, but I'm not tracking every single thing. I'm not ever giving myself permission to eat more. Again, double negatives. I'm awful with these today. But yeah, you catch my drift. This is the middle ground that I've landed on. So this is how I personally like to lose weight without counting my calories. And I appreciate, again, some people might watch this and go, you're kind of still talking about calorie counting, Ryan. You're just kind of doing it in your head. Fair enough. But what I would say to you, if I'm trying to be honest, what I mean is, I should always try and be honest. So I'm kind of using funny language around this. But if I'm really trying to be honest about this and speak what is in my heart, every day for me, I barely think about calories, because it's all been done for me. But I wind up still eating a very calorie controlled diet. And I think that's the distinction. I think that is the most superior way to lose weight without counting calories, is I'm not actually constantly thinking about calories, and I'm not like this after every meal, but I still do use measuring cups to ensure that when I planned 3 months ago this new rice and beans meal, that I know, hey, this is going to be about 250 calories of rice because I'm using the right amount of a measuring cup. That, for me, has been the perfect marriage between precision and structure, but also not making it too arduous, neurotic, still having some semblance of fun with it, still being guided by my own intuition on days I want to eat a little bit more and less, and because I don't have to officially bank those calories then feeling shamed or guilty about it. That's been perfect for me. And I dare say, I must concede, and I said I'd cover downsides, my method still does have some of the downsides that the calorie tracking free method, shares downsides with, in that there is still somewhat of a lack of precision there. It isn't as guaranteed because, again, I dare say, there are days where I absolutely end up near 2,650 calories or 3,000 calories or 2,100 calories. So it still isn't as precise. And because I choose not to weigh things like fruit and veg, and I still use guidelines, so I still use, again, measuring cups, especially for the more caloric dense stuff. I still make sure that tablespoon of flaxseed is a level tablespoon of flaxseed, therefore I know it's about 10, 11, 12 grams, give or take, and it's not like a really heaped tablespoon of flaxseed that's more like 16, 17 grams. So again, there's some honesty required with all of that because I'm still measuring. I've lost my train of thought slightly, but there is still precision there, I think is what I'm trying to say. And ultimately, yeah, that's been the perfect marriage for me between both sides of the calorie counting discussion. But I appreciate it kind of maybe isn't as much middle ground so much as more of a bit of a concession towards this end of the spectrum. But that is the one that's really changed my life. Build repeatable meals that you know the calorie amounts of. Understand the rough calorie ballparks that you need to be in to get a certain result, whether it be gaining, maintenance, weight loss phase. And then kind of build it together like that, like Tetris, like you're pulling things together throughout the day. It isn't as clean or efficient as by clean, I don't mean like clean ingredients, but cleanly done in terms of loose ends and efficiency as the very, very tracked method, but it certainly isn't the all-out chaos of method number one either. This is the formula that's changed my life. If all of this is overwhelming to you and you just want me as your coach to tell you exactly what and how much to eat to get in your best shape ever, and you are a vegan or a plant-based dieter, which I've barely talked about in this video, but those are the clients that I serve because that's the lifestyle I've adopted over these 10 years, then you can learn more about Vegan, Slim and Sustain. It's my one-on-one coaching program. I'll put the link to that down below. And that's great because I just handle all the numbers for you. So we're still calorie tracking, but you're not actually calorie tracking. Does that make sense? But there's a secret. I'm going back to another point now, but there's a secret in still using things like measuring cups and weighing out food and things like this that allows you to just build, again, these still really controlled meals, but you're not thinking about the calories anymore, and it's a beautiful place to be. But anyway, Vegan, Slim and Sustain down below. If you don't have to want to worry about any of this stuff and you just want me to tell you how to do it, and then in time you can learn a little bit more about caloric density as we go, but you just want to get up and running with weight loss, not thinking about it, Vegan, Slim and Sustain, the link will be down below. But hopefully the information in this video helps you get that scale moving without having to be so neurotic about tracking your calories every single day. Hope this helps.